Hello and welcome to episode 4 of Not Yet Adults. I, of course, am one of your hosts, Collin Geffrey, joined by the ever faithful, the ever talented, the best beard in this podcast, I think, easily, between the two of us. Eric Zayas. How's it going, Eric?
Hi, I think you're overhyping me. I'm Eric. How's it going?
Here's what I respect about you, Eric, is you let your beard grow out. You like commit to it. And I'm just like, no, the second it gets past like 3 millimeters, shave that thing.
I used to be like that to an extent because I used to be a clean shaven man. Then I every time I let it grow out, it wouldn't really look right. And then after a while, I was just like, I just gotta accept it and let it grow out and see what happens. And now, whereas before I was uncomfortable with a beard and more comfortable clean shaven, and anytime I had facial hair, it seemed not right. Now clean shaven, I feel weird, and so I need a beard. And I feel like when I'm clean shaven, I look like a child.
It's really hard to go back the other direction. Like, I feel like when you don't have a beard and you get one, people catch on to that quickly. But it's very hard to have a beard and then go back to being clean shaven. It's like people just can't accept it. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, because when you've had it for so long, it feels like an extension to your hair. It's
part of you, and you're kind of hiding behind it, and it whispers things to you, and you're like, oh man, maybe I'm losing it. I'm kind of going crazy here.
That might just be on you, man.
Oh, that might just be me. Yeah. Anyways. Well, folks, apart from being about beards, Not Yet Adults is the podcast where we talk about coming of age, life lessons, anything in between. We don't really know what this podcast is about, but maybe that's half the fun of it. Eric, how's your week going, buddy? What's been going on?
I had a pretty good week. I was working for most of it. Now that I have a few days off of work, I'm just kind of relaxing, chilling out. How about you?
Yeah, I'm pretty similar position to where I was in the last episode we talked. I'm spending most of my time sending off job applications, finishing up this playthrough of Oxenfree, which is this really cool game. Yeah, just spending time with the family, spending time in my dungeon of a room, getting these job applications sent off. That's about it.
That's awesome. Speaking of job applications, I actually have been having some difficulty finding a job. I applied for one that kind of fit what I'm looking for, but I don't know if I'll get it. So I set up an appointment with someone at PLU at the in the career connections office to sort of figure out how to beef up my resume and sort of give me advice on how to job search. So
do you know anyone that works in the industry, or anyone even better yet that hires in the industry that you could send your resume to and just be like, hey, what can I do?
Not really. The only people I really know in the industry are the people from our friends from PLU who are sort of beginners just like me.
Well, I think the best way to do it is just go to Hollywood and ask for $100 million to go make a movie. Because, I mean, they have a lot of money there. It's not that much.
Great advice.
Yeah. So, I don't know.
I heard they're just giving out jobs.
So, Eric, we've kind of ran down the list of topics that we've covered so far. We've talked about, family. We've talked about work. I thought maybe this week we could talk about kind of a more controversial thing, and that's stress. Stress is something that I feel like everyone in some way or another has an idea of what it is. Everyone's been stressed at one point or another, but we all handle it very differently. And for a lot of people, I feel like your age can have a huge role in how you handle stress. So I mean, let's just start there. In the average week, where do you feel like you personally are the most stressed?
A few months ago, I would have said at school, especially for final tests or essays that I procrastinated on and left to the last minute, especially when I got to the my final semester at PLU, because every final test and essay was extra important because it was the last thing between me and graduation. And so that was where I was most stressed. And now that I'm free of school, it's all just work. My stress comes from working at a hardware / home improvement store during the summer when customers are most busy, at most in their sort of DIY kind of fix up the house kind of mode.
Sure.
And so yeah, it's getting kind of chaotic at work.
So for you, you mentioned you're working, both of us are job searching. For you, does the stress come from the work you have now or from the work you're trying to find for the future? Or I guess obviously there's stress in both of those, but which one do you feel like stresses you out more?
The reality of my current job stresses me, but the idea of searching for another job is also a source of stress. Like, not even necessarily the job searching, because looking for a job and applying, those activities aren't necessarily very stressful, except for the part where I finding it difficult to find a sort of more ideal job, a particularly ideal job, I should say. But just thinking about the fact that I'm at a point in my life where I need to actively search for the next chapter, and just the idea, it's kind of like, getting online, headed towards a roller coaster. It's not, so much, when you're on the roller coaster, it's not really that scary. It's more fun, but on the line headed toward the roller coaster, there's that anticipation, that sort of like you have time to think about it, and your mind goes through all these horrible scenarios that makes the experience seem like it's gonna be so much worse than it is.
And right now, we're just punching and kicking and fighting desperately to just get a seat on the roller coaster. Once we're on, we're fine. But right now, it's so much stress trying to get on there.
Yeah, there's that part of it too, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me, obviously, I'm not working a job, so my main area of stress is job searching and all the time that goes into that. For me, I feel like stress is a part of life. At no point would I be like, I want no stress, which I understand is a double negative. But like, I feel like I'm the kind of person who needs a certain level of stress in order to function at my best, because if I don't have a little bit of fire underneath my feet, I won't want to move and get anything done. But I do think stress, especially in the last few years, as mental health and stuff like that is being acknowledged in the widespread a little bit more readily. Like, we're starting to see the medical and physical and emotional effects that stress, and especially long-term stress, has on people. And stress is, not so much just a word when you're feeling overwhelmed anymore, but it's like, no, there's actually studies to prove all of the negative health effects stress has on you. I feel like that's maybe a different kind of stress, It's like knowing you have a video to edit. For me, that's a good kind of stress, because I feel like there's pressure on me to do something productive. But when you're in school and you have 4 tests that you have to do the next day and 3 papers to write, and you got to go to that thing that your friends are throwing that night, and you got to call your parents or whatever, that's the kind of stress that makes it feel like it's just everything's kind of crumbling down around you.
I remember like that kind of stress from college, and that's things have sort of relaxed now that my schedule has opened up. But I'm right there with you, like being in that mode where it seemed like everything happened at once in college, because the way that the class schedules are structured, midterms and finals are around the same time.
Right.
So it's kind of like when it rains, it pours as far as responsibilities are concerned.
Yeah, and in college especially, I feel like, because like you said, the semester's broken up in a way that there's not really any time to catch your breath. It's just you're immediately slammed with more work than you can handle at once, and then that, keeps you busy for a few weeks until it all happens again. In terms of you personally with stress, do you have moments where you can kind of stop yourself and be like, okay, I'm getting too stressed, I'm getting too worked up, I need to just take a step back from everything? Or does that happen ttoo late, I guess? Do you often realize, oh crap, I'm really stressed, this is not good, I let this go on too long?
It depends on what I'm working on. If it's if it's a homework assignment or something to that effect, I rarely take a break. I might stand up and walk away from it, which I guess is a sort of break, because after staring at a computer or reading a textbook, I get kind of antsy. I can't sit still for too long, so I get up and walk. And sometimes I found that while I'm reading a chapter of a textbook for school, something that really helped me was standing and pacing around the room while reading the textbook. I think my brain and my legs are connected in a way, not just in the literal way that's connected, but in a sort of thinking way. When I'm thinking out something, or thinking out whether it's a story that I'm writing, or I like to keep moving. And so when I sit down and stay planted, I'll either get too tired or too bored, or tired and bored. So when I stand up and pace, it keeps me body occupied, so my mind can focus on the task at hand. But of course, when it's something like work, like a paycheck is on the line, or where something is time sensitive and it's not based solely around when you want to do it and how you want to do it, I just kind of focus and get the job done. I can't really take the chance to take a break, and maybe I want to, and maybe there's a part of my brain that's like, come on, just stop.
Well, and that's where I feel stress gets the worst, is when it's piled up to the point that you can't have that moment to just walk away. and you can't have that moment to just take a breath because, well, I mean, this podcast, for example, like, we edit this podcast and it takes a while to edit each episode, and it gets to the point where if you space it out over a few days, it's not that bad. But if you try and sit down and do it all at once when you're out of time, then you get mad at everything and everything's going on because it's just, you're right up against the deadline. It's the same way with homework. It's the same way with videos. When you don't build that time into your schedule to be like, you know what, I'm just going to walk away for a minute. I'm not going to look at it. I'm not going to think about it. When you don't have that, everything kind of gets worse, I feel. That's hard because I feel like life doesn't care if you have that time to take a break. You know what I mean? That's something you have to go out of your way to make for yourself. And sometimes even then you can't make that for yourself.
Mm-hmm. I always think like whenever I feel that like I have too much weight on my shoulders, there's that sort of additional stress when you feel kind of like you're cornered and you're like at a loss for help, that like when you think about like the universe, not to get like too like spiritual or too like, the universe is, at least I believe, is passive, and it's just like this thing that sort of puts stuff on you or doesn't put stuff on you. It doesn't really have any emotions and doesn't know or doesn't have any empathy, doesn't know when you're giving too much or not enough. I guess I don't really know where I'm going with this, but basically
in other words, it's kind of on you. The universe isn't going to lean off just because you've already had a lot thrown on your plate. It's just going to keep going in whichever direction it's going with little regard, if any, for how you're doing.
Exactly.
So how do we do that then? How if we're going through a stressful time, or someone out there is going through a stressful time, knowing full well that this universe isn't going to be like, oh, you know what, Eric's worked a lot of hours this week. Let's let him find a $20 bill on the way home or whatever. How do we? What's your outlet for that? Not just taking a break, but when you realize that you're too stressed about something, what do you do? How do you relieve that?
Well, I like playing video games. I think that's a really calming activity I do. There's a few, especially like single player sort of adventure games, because I find that competitive online games make me more stressed, and sometimes I'll actually be going into a game like Overwatch online and at a neutral or even like in a good mood, and then I end a game in a bad mood because it was a bad loss or something. So I like to play little single player games where I can go at my own pace. Like recently I'm playing this game on Steam called Hollow Knight. I just started playing it. I don't know if you may have known it when it came out, because it's been out for a bit, but I had it on my wish list and was just like, I'm going to treat myself and buy this game, download it, play it, and it's just been a delightful, calming, relaxing experience. Things like that. Sometimes I like to read comic books. I like to collect the comic book by the volume, and then so I have like a nice medium amount of book to read. And yeah, I like to like dive into basically a story experience, whether that's video game, comic book, novels, which I haven't really been reading recently, but I want to start getting into.
Novels are hard because I feel like as a kid I really liked reading novels as escapism and like as a way to just relax, and I feel like I could just get lost in that world. And now when I read novels, I feel like I'm wasting time. Like I feel like just I'm not getting anything out of this, as opposed to like when I read nonfiction, I feel like I'm learning. I have a way easier time reading like biographies or whatever than I do novels, because novels I just feel like I'm just burning time. I might as well just be staring at the wall.
That's interesting. I do understand that, because with like novels or stories, there's so much content in the world, especially nowadays because everyone's pushed to making their own sort of stuff. But there's so many people making millions and millions of hours of story or entertainment that you could be watching something or reading something and thinking like, I'll never even be able to consume even a fraction. It's basically, this is a first world problem. This is a great problem to have. Yeah, and it's just this feeling of like there's so much stuff in the world, almost like too much story, that while I'm reading this story or watching this television show, maybe I could be spending this time creating myself or doing something productive. And I'm kind of like while I understand that, I'm kind of the opposite that you are. Like when I read like a nonfiction story or like a memoir, I kind of just like tune out, especially with memoirs, because since it's based in reality, it doesn't have that sort of pizzazz or that sort of like pop that like fictional stories have, because fictional stories, of course, since they're handcrafted, they can be like as outrageous or as exaggerated as the author wants.
See, I totally get that, but that's why I like biographies, especially biographies about people that are dead, because then an author can go in, look at their story as a whole, and kind of piece the events together in a way that tells almost like a fiction. But it doesn't give that feel, because like the thing I get frustrated with is me reading Harry Potter tells me nothing and educates me not at all about the world in Percy Jackson or about the world in Aragon or about like the things you learn from Harry Potter only apply to Harry Potter. And the things you learn in Percy Jackson only apply to Percy Jackson. And so they're so segmented and they're so kind of narrow in what they teach you. And obviously there's things apart from just what's in the world. There's, life lessons and creativity and all that. But I just don't get the satisfaction that I get from reading fiction that I do from nonfiction, because I'm like, okay, this is someone who really lived in our world, that really did these things, allegedly most of the time. And they're kind of teaching you about the way the world works because you can see how they navigated it. And that's, I don't know, that's very powerful to me. But I mean, you mentioned kind of finding this escapism through fiction and why you enjoy reading it. And I feel like it's kind of hypocritical for someone to say, oh, well, I'm a writer, but I don't really like reading that much. Or I'm a creator, or I'm sorry, I'm a video maker, but I don't really watch YouTube. It's like, well, no, you have to read if you want to write, and you have to watch if you want to, make, because you need to be consuming things constantly so that you're learning the good and the bad and what you like and what you don't and what your style is.
Yeah, I heard a while ago, and someone, I think it was maybe the college professor, told us, and it rang so true, that you need to read to write. And it seems so simple, but it's like some people are so driven by creating that they don't stop to like learn how to create.
Right.
And that, I feel like that stunts a lot of people's creations because of that. Something I don't think I asked you. I mean, you talked about how you prefer nonfiction, but I didn't really get the chance to ask you, what are your kind of specific things they like to do when you are trying to relax or trying to reduce stress?
I feel like I'm least stressed when I'm actually doing the things that are stressing me out, if that makes any sense. When you have the things on your to-do list, for me, the most stressful part is looking at that to-do list. That's when I'm like, oh my God, there's so much to get done. I hate everything. I'm not going to be able to do any of this. When I'm actually doing the things that are on the to-do list, I don't feel stressed because I'm constantly seeing progress. I'm constantly seeing things happen. I like staying busy, and I like that feeling of knowing that, I'm getting a lot done that day. In terms of like when I just need to just unplug and be like, I need to just take a break from everything and just go off and do my own thing. I guess pretty similar to you. I like reading. I've been playing some Borderlands 2 recently, which is a very relaxing game for me. It's interesting for me because, I don't get paid for it, but in a lot of ways, my YouTube stuff right now is my work, quote unquote, since I'm using that for job applications. And so my relationship with games is often that I don't necessarily want to play that to relax, because that's what's giving me stress sometimes is making gaming videos and stuff like that. So oftentimes gaming isn't what I want to do to relax. But what were we going to say? I'm sorry.
Sorry, I've often thought it's interesting that people that do sort of things that are regarded as entertainment for work, because then when they go home or when they have their time for relaxing, this thing that's seen as like a relaxing, entertaining experience is sort of maybe less desirable to that person because it reminds them so much of work.
Well, it's like if you're a movie reviewer and you have to review whatever the new Marvel movie is, you're excited about it, but at the same time, there's a certain level of, and then I have to go write the review, or, and then I have to collect footage, or whatever it is, because there's that underlying tone of it's fun, but it's also stressing me out because I know there's work that comes with that. I guess that's why some people like having a job that isn't something they're that interested in, because they don't want to, kind of have their passion overexposed to them to the point that they don't enjoy it anymore.
I don't know. I think I definitely prefer a job with something that I'm passionate about, because even though it'll take that thing and make it into work, I feel like my goal is to merge fun and work together so that, I don't like hate my job pretty much. And even if that makes those experiences that are like usually just pure fun a little bit less fun, to me that's worth it, if that means that job isn't just not fun And you know what I mean?
Well, I heard this quote recently, and I'm going to butcher it. I don't remember where I heard it, but it was not my original thought. And basically, it was, it's everyone always says that if you find something you love doing, it doesn't feel like work. And the point this person made was basically, if you find something you really love doing, you're always working a little bit. Like you're never just shutting that off, because like if you really love what you're doing, you're always thinking about it or working on it or brainstorming in some capacity. I feel like people who are, especially like you and me, who are interested in creative stuff, whether it's film or video production or whatever, it can be hard to shut that off, because in some capacity you're always thinking about that. And so even if you're not working, quote unquote, those gears are still always kind of turning in your head, because that's just kind of the person you are. The idea of not getting stressed out, of saying, okay, I'm not going to be stressed, I'm just going to take a step away and not get anything done, that to me is more stressful than actually being stressed out, because I know that with that comes the idea that I'm not going to get anything done today, or I'm not going to get anything done for a while. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, that kind of illustrates a really interesting difference between us. Whereas I procrastinate and try to avoid the work in which you relax, you actually dive right in. You're doing like what I would consider the correct adult response to stress is, where you're like,
I have a long history of procrastinating. I not for a second will I pretend I'm like high and mighty up here on my throne scolding young Eric for procrastinating. Like, no, I'm terrible at a lot of stuff, and I definitely do procrastinate sometimes. It's just that for me, I'm more stressed waiting to get something done than I am doing something I don't want to be doing, I guess. Kind of shifting gears here for a minute. We've talked about how, we personally handle stress a little bit. What do you feel like the appropriate response is when someone you're close to you can tell is stressed?
I always want to be like a shoulder to lean on when someone's dealing with something, whether it's stress or like relationship issues or something. I've been told, this may be like a bit of a humble brag, but I've been told multiple times throughout my life that I'm a good listener, which always seemed interesting to me, because I feel like being a good listener is very passive. You're not really doing much work, but I think that when people say that, they mean like it's not just someone staying there listening, but also like engaging. And
yeah, you're engaged. You're asking questions. You're expressing interest. You're not just sitting there.
And I think it's really important to have that in your life, and to also to be that person for someone else in your life. And not necessarily so that you can offer a solution, but just so that you can let them vent, or just so that they know that, someone's hearing their problems and someone's there for them.
Right.
Yeah, and I just try to be like a good listener to as many people as I can, especially the people that are like close to me in my life.
Yeah, I feel like in that situation, there's not much else you can do. Like, it's the first thing that comes to mind apart from that is, oh, you can try and do a couple of the things that they're stressed about for them, just to kind of get it off their plate. But then there's the stress that comes from someone else is doing something for me. I don't know if they're doing it correctly. I'd really rather just do it myself, especially if you're kind of a control freak like I find myself to be sometimes. But I think you kind of hit the nail on the head of sometimes all you can do is just let them know, hey, I'm here. It's kind of what this podcast is in some ways. Is it's our therapeutic way to just kind of get crap out there, and not that we have a solution, or not that here's the silver bullet for your problem, but just once it's out there, it's a little bit easier to come to terms with and feel better about.
Are you, when you have a friend or someone close to you that's that you see is stressed out, do you try to just like be there as a listener, or do you do something like more specific?
And see, I'm weird. I'll be the first person to admit that. The way I react to stuff is probably not the way a lot of people do, and that's whatever. But if I'm stressed, I don't want someone to like come in and say, "Oh, it's gonna be okay. It's all right. It's fine." Because my response is gonna be, "No, it's not fine. I got to get this crap done. Stop telling me I don't. Like that's not helpful right now." So honestly, when I'm stressed, probably the best thing to do is for just people to leave me the heck alone. And just clear it out. Give me a 5-mile radius. Just no one goes in there. He just needs to get crap done or whatever. Which I'm not saying is healthy, because I know they mean well. Like when family or friends or significant others see that you're stressed and they're trying to help you out, I know they mean well. But more often than not, that just stresses me out more, because I'm like, oh God, now I have to worry about them thinking I'm stressed.
Yeah, I think like there is like a sort of downside sometimes to being the kind of person that always wants to help, because some people just like really need to be like alone with their problems because that's how they deal with it, or like not necessarily because they're like shutting down. When someone's trying to help you, there's the additional stress of like, oh, now I have to stop being stressed to help this person feel better. And the longer I'm stressed, the more they're going to try to help me, and now we're both stressed, and then it sort of like magnifies and there's a snowball effect.
It just keeps going back and forth, and suddenly you're both miserable, and you're like, God darn this whole thing. I feel like we could definitely do an episode at some point on anxiety or something along those lines. But kind of that for me leads into kind of how you prioritize things yourself and how you process information versus how other people around you are processing what you're going through. The example, again, if you have too much on your to-do list and you're kind of stressed out or whatever, and then people around you start to take notice and they're worried about you, and then you start to worry about why they're worrying about you, and back and forth and back and forth. But yeah, I don't think there is a golden solution. I don't think there is a perfect thing you can do for yourself when you're stressed or for other people when they're stressed. I think it's just kind of like you said, being receptive, of just taking notice, looking around, listening, not just sitting there, but really listening, and just kind of being aware of the situation, even if you can't always solve it. Because once you can identify the things, that's a lot better than nothing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think like it's important to remember there's no like handbook to how to deal with stress or certain problems, or how to respond to a friend or family member who's dealing with stress. I think the most important thing you just can do is try.
Yeah, I mean, I think even if someone is the kind of person that they don't really want help when they're stressed, I feel like trying to help and that not being what they need is better than not trying to help when that is what they need. And kind of expressing, hey, I care about you. I'm sorry you're going through this. I want you to know I'm here if you need help. I feel like that goes a long way as compared to just, they're probably okay, I'm just going to keep my distance.
Yeah, and it's just words. It takes a little effort. You can just say, hey, I'm here for you, and then you can leave, and you never actually have to help them.
Yeah, just book it, say it, you don't mean it, and then they're like, oh, hey, cool, can you do this? And you're like, I'd love to, but no, I can't.
Yeah, you don't have to actually help them.
No, you said it. That's what's important. It's just empty words.
We're undoing everything we just did.
We're like 30 minutes of like progressive, very open dialogue about how we manage things. Then it's like, bottom line, just bail on people. Don't follow up on what you say at all. And you won't get stressed because you have no responsibility, and it's great. Well, Eric, we've been talking for nigh upon 30 minutes here. This episode was kind of meandering and all over the place, but so is stress. So maybe that's okay. It's kind of on brand for us, I guess.
Kind of very fitting considering the topic.
Well, Eric, we should probably get into plugging all the wonderful places that people can follow us on. Before that, is there any closing words that you have for the boys and girls and buffaloes of all ages out there?
One thing I want to say, because we've been talking about some like what many deem a pretty touchy subject, is if you're dealing with any problems you have inside, whether that's stress or anxiety or anything that other people can't see, but it's like an invisible feeling that you feel, remember it's your responsibility to reach out to people, to talk to people, to make sure people know that you're not all right, and to seek out help, because people can't read your mind. They can't see the feelings that you're feeling inside. You have to show them with your words.
And that can be the hardest part, especially in day-to-day life, when like you kind of get into a routine and you understand what you have to do. It can be hard to remember or even to be aware of the fact that, oh, wait, there are people that can help me. I can reach out. Sometimes, especially if, asking for help isn't something you're used to, that can be a very foreign thing that doesn't even come to mind, of like, oh, wait, this is why friends are here, is to help you when you're down, or why family is there. And so that can be, especially if, you're someone that deals with a lot of pride, that can be something that is difficult to do, but it is something that you have at your disposal, and that's something to keep in mind.
Yeah, don't let pride get in the way of your mental health or your well-being. Remember, whether it's friends, families, sometimes strangers, there's always someone out there that can help you, or that will listen. Maybe they can't help you, but they'll at least listen to you. And that's an important first step.
Can we get you on like a sleazy low budget commercial on like late night television where you're like,
oh boy,
like a therapist in quotes, like I can like This is sounding sexual. I don't mean it to. It's I was like, can you just be like the advice specialist on like late night television? You're like, call now and I can help you.
Oh God, I should not be an advice specialist on any sort of medium.
It'd be a good segment though, I feel like, for the show.
Might be entertaining, yeah.
Well, folks, this has been Not Yet Adults episode 4. Remember, there is a plethora of places on the internet that you can follow us on. We are officially on Facebook. We had some issue on the back end, but now everything is fixed. So Not Yet Adults on Facebook, and we'll link that in the description to the podcast as well. We are on Twitter and Instagram at Not Yet Adults. Eric, I believe we have a subreddit now. Is that true? Is that real?
Yes, we do. It's r/notyetadults, all lowercase.
What do they call Reddit people? What are you called if you're on Reddit?
Redditors? That's what I've been told, yeah.
Yeah, if you're a Redditor, go check out r/notyetadults. Well, we also have SoundCloud, which is the place that you should check out if you want to listen to the podcast. We're on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, all of these places, pretty much everywhere. If there's somewhere that you like to get stuff, search Not Yet Adults. We're probably on there. And that's about all I got. So, yeah. Thanks for listening. We appreciate you. We're still figuring out what this is, but we appreciate you joining us for the ride because we're having a lot of fun with it. So, until next time, this has been Not Yet Adults, and we're out.
Yes, thanks for listening. Goodbye, guys and gals, people.